Apologizing can be really hard. Some people have more trouble with it than others. So let's talk about apologizing. Why is it so hard for some people? Well, apologizing, even for the little things, sometimes can trigger anxiety for people. It can trigger guilt, regret, sadness, depression, fear, right? Sometimes people avoid the act of apologizing to another person, even for little mistakes, because they're afraid that it will bring up an uncomfortable topic again and they're trying to avoid that. Or it brings up an extreme feeling of guilt, even if it's just a small, minor mistake that they made. And so people avoid because that's uncomfortable for them. Or they think, if I just don't mention it, maybe the person didn't notice or they'll forget about the incident. It doesn't make it right, but many people avoid apologizing for these reasons. If you're one of those people, it might be something to think about. How can you start leaning into those feelings? How can you start working on approaching that by apologizing for the little things in life and getting yourself to a place where it becomes more comfortable just by the act of doing it over and over again? The reason that apologizing is so important, I want to talk about that for a minute, is because it shows respect for the other person, right? Acknowledging our part in any kind of a negative or uncomfortable interaction is respectful to the other person. It builds trust once we actually apologize, which is funny because sometimes people will think, well, if they know I'm making mistakes, they're not going to trust me. But bringing it to the forefront and saying, I acknowledge that I had some part in this, I acknowledge I could have done better with this, will actually help increase trust over time because the other person will recognize that you're going to try to make amends or share when you notice this. It's essentially a way of saying, I'm trying to not do this again, right? If we keep quiet on it or ignore it, staying silent kind of tells the other person, I promise I'm going to keep doing it again. Or that I don't even know I'm doing it, so you're probably going to get that same poor performance out of me again, or more uncomfortable interactions with me again. So it's really important to share what you're thinking with other people. Just because you know you made a mistake and you're working on improving doesn't mean the other person can read your mind and knows that. So really try to verbalize that to others. It's also modeling for other people what we want back, right? Wouldn't it be great if other people were able to do this for us, to come to us and say, I thought about that interaction yesterday and I could have done that better. I said something that was kind of blaming, or I snapped, and I realized later some of that was on me. I could have done that better. I didn't communicate as well as I could have, and I wanted to apologize for my part of that. Right? It helps others to know that you're trying to do better. It helps them to know what's going on in your mind because people are not mind readers, right? And it models for them a way of healthy communication that you probably would love if somebody else was doing for you. So apologizing is very important, to say, hey, I wanted to talk about yesterday, that moment, or today, this morning, that moment. It doesn't have to be immediate. Sometimes we do have to think about things for a couple of days, but trying to give ourselves the permission to apologize when we've made a mistake, to come to the other person and say, can we talk about that thing that happened the other day? Or I wanted to let you know I gave this some thought and I can see where my side of things might have led to some of that experience. So I want you to think about that this coming week as part of this series that I've been doing of helping you to grow. And if you have comments or questions, put them in the chat. My name is Dr. Kristen Kopez. I'm a clinical psychologist. Subscribe for more of these little tips and hints. Thanks so much.